Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Lumen Project. My name is Chris Angel. I'm a co-host here with the host of the most. I feel like I'm in some sort of WWE. Jeff Bernheisel. Jeff, how are you?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Did I say that right? Bernheisel.
Heisel. Yep.
Feel the burn.
Yep.
I mean, this is our inaugural conversation here in this podcast about what the heck the Lumen Project even is. But so I figure we can just go through the origin story. Everybody loves a good origin story.
Yeah, I figured that would be a good place to start. So I guess that I'm trying to figure out how far to go back, like where to begin. It really began. So I had opened. I've been into whiskey a long time. If you know me, you know that. I ran a big whiskey website and I got in this whiskey community and kind of got very heavily into that. And eventually I wanted to open my own private whiskey club. And I'm going through the motions of opening this place. Took about 2 years doing all the marketing, doing all the planning and all the permitting and all the crazy stuff we have to do to open up a private club that within that club is a bar. In the state of Oregon, they're they're jerks about all of the rules and regulations about bars and alcohol and all that, which is fine. But I go through about a 3-year window of idea to execution and getting this thing open. And it damn near killed me. I mean, I was working full time and then I was doing all that stuff and I got it open and it was like, this is my life. This is it. I quit my job and I ran that thing for just about 6 months before I started having some crazy issues with the landlord and the construction company and the OLCC and all of the things. It all came tumbling down, right?
Yeah.
And in the end, I basically had to pull the plug on it, shut it down. I lost my life savings. I lost my identity. I had to go back to my previous job and I didn't really have to beg them to come back, but I kind of had to beg them to come back.
Wow.
And I was just super lost at that point. Like I said, you lose I lost like $120,000.
Wow.
And I lost a lot of friends through the process, just in the fact that I was working so hard and I kind of lost touch with them. And then there were some friends that I lost because they were so heavily invested in the idea that when it didn't work out, they were like, oh, we don't want to be around you anymore. Kind of, that's how I felt.
Wow.
And so anyway, for about 6 months after that, like I was lost and just straight didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I knew I didn't want to go back into what I was doing, which I did, but I needed to pay the bills. And so all of this stuff is happening. And I kind of just was like, what am I going to do now? And got to the point where I was buying courses online, like trying to figure out if I wanted to, go back deep into marketing. Marketing's always been kind of my passion and helping people improve and specifically through marketing tactics. And so I was buying all of these courses and all of this stuff online. And I hired a coach at one point and just nothing was taking hold and nothing was making me feel good. And at one point I was just like, man, I'm just going to sell all my shit and move to a different country and like go work on a cruise line or something. Like, I don't know. I was just mentally like checked out. But then at one point I was really lucky because I was dating a girl and she was kind of my rock through this. And she was like, look, you're better than this. Pull yourself together. It's fine. Have a little pity party. Seems like you've been doing that for a bit now. Like, let's get our shit together and move forward.
Right.
And shortly after that, I got introduced to a guy that ran a community similar to what we're building here. And the gist of that community was every day they give you a topic to write about, and then every day they give you a workout, and you have to go record on what is that called? Not slow motion, but the other, it's opposite.
Oh, I don't know.
Time lapse. Geez.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, record on time lapse. Like I had to record my workout for the day on time lapse, and then I had to go write about a topic and publish that somewhere. And we could publish it publicly if we wanted to, or private in this group. And if you didn't do those two things, you got kicked out of the group and you had to pay. And I was paying like $200 a month for this. So, you've got a little accountability team and everybody's doing their thing. And what I found was through them giving me a topic to write about and a story to tell every day, I was able to relate that to what had been happening in my life. And as I started telling that story, and I had done a really good job as I'm building my club and everything that I was doing, I was telling that story. But when it all came tumbling down, I didn't. I clammed up and I didn't really tell a lot of people what had happened. And so
Hmm.
I started telling that story publicly, and that the opposite of what I thought was going to happen. I thought people were going to be like, well, you're a loser, you have failed business.
Hmm.
And I always say, like, even though the business technically failed, I don't consider it a failure because I learned so much through that process. And this was part of it. Through telling that story, I had so many people, so many guys reaching out specifically that were like, hey, thank you. First of all, thank you for telling this story. I've been depressed. I've been feeling this way. I had several people that came to me that were literally suicidal and said, because I was at one point, I mean, I kind of left that out. Like, I was depressed and borderline suicidal. I was so lost. And when I'm telling these stories and telling the story of what was going on and doing this on a daily basis and just sharing my world, when you have somebody that comes to you and says, hey man, I was going through a crazy divorce and, losing my kids and losing my wife and losing my whole identity. And then I see you're going through the same thing, similar thing. And you're pulling yourself out of it by doing these things. He's like, I'm using one guy as an example right now, but I had 3 of these happen. Wow. He said, I want to thank you, first of all, because you literally saved my life. I see that it's not the end of the world. We can pull ourselves out of this, and there's still a light at the end of that tunnel. And I kept that in mind, that light at the end of the tunnel thing. And that'll tie into something later too. But like I said, I had that happen like 3 times in a matter of about 2 months. And that was when I was like, man, there's something here. Just me telling a story about what I was going through and picking myself back up and how I was showing people what I could go do, and that we can all go do this. This is in all of us. When we get beat down, we just have to get up and go do it again, or find something else to do, or whatever it may be. But that's kind of how the idea came about to start this group. Was as I was doing this and I got all of these messages, they're all private messages. I would put these stories out publicly and people would comment and they'd say, oh, nice job, Jeff. Like, congratulations. You always get that stuff. And it's like, oh, that's great. I mean, it makes you feel good. Right. But what made me feel really fucking good was the messages that I was getting behind the scenes of people saying, hey, you saved my life. I want to say thank you. Like that, it's just like, Jesus, but I was like, man, there's something here. And I think there's room in this world that we live in for a place for guys, because we can't generally go do stuff like that publicly, or we don't. We've been trained, programmed, if you will, to not do that.
Yep.
But I went and did it. And then I had people reaching out and they started doing it. And as I was it's almost like I became a coach in a sense. And I never really thought of myself as a life coach type person. But these guys, I quickly realized they looked up to me, and some of them were even, they were older than me, which is a weird dynamic when you have somebody that's older than you and you kind of look up to them, but that they come and they tell you like, hey man, I love what you're doing and I see what you're doing and I appreciate it and I want to be involved. How can I help? How can I be involved? So all of this is happening and I'm like, man, there's something here. Like, we should build a community where like-minded guys that are just have gone through some stuff in life can get together and share their methods of how they came out of it. They can share methods of, advice or whatever it may be. And that was kind of where this came from, this idea. And then the name Lumen, as we came up with, because so for those that don't know, lumen is a measure of light, and it's like basically 1 candle power. And as you add candles to that, the lumens get higher, it gets brighter. And I think as a community, I might be the first guy holding a candle, but then Chris shows up next to me holding a candle, and then John and all these guys showing up next to me holding candles. Like, our community gets brighter and brighter and brighter. And when we came up with the name, the Lumen Project, it actually jumped out at me right off that page that you because you had like 30 or 40 of those words, that we had come up with. And when I saw that, I was like, oh shit, there it is. So that's kind of how it came to be. There's another backstory about the light part that we can tell in another episode down the road, just for time's sake. But it had to do with being a light in the dark when other people need it. And I met a woman that kind of changed my life in that sense. And she told me that, what I had gone through, and I had almost died at certain time. I had this weird thing in my head. And I had to go to the hospital, and the doctor literally said, "You're lucky to be here." She came to me a couple weeks later and said, "Hey, God told me to come and find you." And I didn't know this woman. I'd never met her. She was like a friend of a girlfriend's. And she came to me and said, "God told me to come and talk to you. You're still here for a reason. You're going to go on and do great things, and you're going to help a lot of people." And I kind of asked her, at the time I was like, "Okay, lady, what do you like, weirdo?" But then she told me all of this crazy stuff about my childhood and the life that I was living, and
Wow.
and she kind of predicted the future, in a sense, if you will, about this group specifically, because I hadn't formed it yet, and I had this idea in my head, and she mapped it all out and kind of spelled it and said, "Hey, you're going to go do a lot of things, and I see you as a lighthouse and a light in the dark for those." She said, "A light for those that are in the dark, that are just trying to find their way." So that was where we came up with the tagline with the Lumen Project, is helping creating a path for men that are just trying to find their way. And then and you're saying of we're all just walking each other home.
Yeah, which I stole from Ram Dass, but yeah, I mean that's the magic right there.
Yep. And so having the opportunity to get together with a bunch of like-minded guys, and maybe they've gone through some shit in their lives, maybe they haven't, maybe just everything's been great and they're just living their best life. Like I want to learn from that guy too. Like, how'd you do that? But also I love having people around me with different opinions and different ideas and different advice, and using that collective as a whole to lift each other up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the idea behind all of this.
Yeah. I love that. There's some, as you were sharing that story too, I can just hear a lot of places where I related to things you were saying, places where I felt like I was lost. I had a 9-month tantrum 3 years ago where, I was a full stop on my business. My income was down to minuscule amounts of dollars a month because I just wasn't willing to play the game I had been playing. I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah. And I think we both did that.
Similar times.
Did recently, like the same exact thing. Like, it's real estate, right? Like I was like,
yeah,
this was fun for a minute, but this is not my life's work. This is not what I want to do.
Right. And that's the part that excites me in this community, is that there's the part of the conversation here is like, what is that? What is your best life? And not just your best life in toys and income and success, but what are you here for? What's your vision for the world? Because I think there's something in men that is benevolent or wanting to serve others, and outside the game we're sort of born into about make money, pay bills, there's another option of like, what is my life for? It's not about making money and paying bills. That's what my life's for. But I don't, I think it's healthy, and I think we can get to that in future episodes too, but it's healthy to begin to explore with other men, like, well, what do you say your life is for? And then that inspires something in me. I'm like, dude, that's good. I like that. And I borrow some things from what you said. And then I say things, you go, that's good. I want to borrow some of that too. And this is how we walk each other home.
Yep. And I mean, that's what happened in that community. It was called the Story Athlete. I mean, and like I said, the two premises of it were every day you tell a story and every day you do a workout, and you work on certain things about yourself. But because we were on little teams, we had accountability with the team, but also in sharing our stories with each other.
Yeah.
I mean, I made some really good friends in that group. It was just a really cool community. And it was the first time in a long time, like probably since sports, to be honest. Like, I played sports in high school and going into college. It was the first time that I felt a sense of like belonging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was a really powerful thing. And that honestly helped pull me out of the funk that I was in. And I don't want it to sound like the community we're starting is for, nothing but guys that are like depressed and just need help getting out of it. Like that, I'm not trying to be a therapist, and I'm not qualified to do that. But there's something to recognizing I was in a funk and putting in the work and the effort and trying and finding something to get me out. Like, if you're at that level right there, then we can help, because we can, circle around each other, lift each other up and do all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, that was the first time in a very long time that I had kind of felt that sense of community. And that is literally what pulled me out of the depression and got me going in the right direction. And that was all in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I kind of got the idea for this group and I started toying with it, and I started talking to some friends, and we kind of formed a small beta test group, if you want to call it that. And then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things happened. There were 5 or 6 guys in the group, just good, close friends of mine. And we were, going through our motions and doing our stuff. But one of the guys that was a close friend passed away. He just died in his sleep one night. And
wow,
that was right before COVID. And then when COVID hit and all the lockdowns and all of that stuff, and to be honest, like during a time when COVID and all the lockdowns were happening, God, could I not have used a big group of guys to like do a Zoom call with every week, because we're all stuck in our houses. But it just wasn't the right time. It didn't feel right for me to press forward and to build.
Yeah.
And then COVID's over. For the last year or so, I've been just kind of going with the motions of life, making sure I had all my shit together and getting everything aligned. And that alignment is what, in my mind, has allowed me to get to where I am. That's kind of how we reconnected. And then I was like, all right, it's go time. People still come to me and ask, these guys from the community, and I still share stories on Facebook and do all of that stuff. And so, people are like, dude, what are you doing? Like, you shouldn't be in real estate, and I quit doing real estate just about a year ago. Now I'm just kind of doing marketing and doing some of that stuff. But I still have people all the time that are like, what are you doing? You should be doing something way bigger than that.
Dude, that's so good. How many men feel that internal conversation of, man, you should be doing something so much bigger.
Yeah. What's my purpose? And that we talked about it earlier too. And that's part of what, like, in my mind, I'd love to have somebody come to me and say, hey, Jeff, I saw your story on Facebook. It resonated with me. Mm-hmm. How can I be involved? How can we work together? What's that look like? Be a part of the community. Within the community, we work on the pillars: mindset, health, wealth, relationships. When you put all of those things together and they're all aligned, like I just mentioned, when I got all of these aligned, my purpose started showing up. And that is my end goal for anybody who aligns with us in this community. Is, I keep using the word align a lot, but I think
I like that word.
It might be on purpose. When we align ourselves and we do all of this stuff, and then our purpose starts showing up, and that's different for everybody. But that is my end goal, is to get somebody to go like, oh my God, I love this community. I've done this for 6 months or a year or whatever. And now all of a sudden I have this idea and I'm going to go execute on it. And then helping them do that.
Yeah.
Like that's what I love. That fills my bucket. And that's, I believe, why I'm here still, and what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I love that. I would add one more thing from the conversations we've had, just so people have some context for maybe the heart of this community. Is there are plenty of communities in the world where, there's an alpha on the pedestal who has all your answers. And, if you don't measure up, then you're a piece of shit, and, you should just work harder. But I think what makes this type of community effective is that it's a peer-to-peer. I think I respect you, you respect me, that there's this level playing field of, we're all human beings in this lived experience called, your life, called a life.
Yeah.
And at some level that makes it safer to be transparent, right? Because if you're coming into a group where someone's an alpha and you're trying to front enough so you don't look like a complete idiot, now we're not having honest conversations. What we're having is masked up flexing conversations. And I think what makes a group like this work is that you just come as you are, knowing that we're human beings, like you're a human being, and nobody's perfect, and we're all walking each other home. Like, that's just, to me, that's so refreshing, because now I can just be me and have real conversations with people. And that's where real connections made, I think.
Yeah. I actually saw a Facebook post the other day that drove me nuts. It was a friend of mine. I use the term friend like in the sense of Facebook friends. I've met the guy once or twice, and he's super cool, and I know he went through some shit in the last few years, and I think he was in a little bit of a dark place, but he started working out very, very heavily. So this Facebook post the other day is him in the mirror flexing his like 8-pack, and he's ripped. And the gist of his post, because you just mentioned it, was nobody cares, work harder. Like, oh, you're going through some shit, nobody cares, work harder. Oh, you're getting divorced, nobody cares, work harder. He listed off like 6 or 7 things, and then his response was nobody cares, work harder. And I was like, man, what a sad existence in that sense of, obviously you've gone through some stuff and you're trying to shield it and you're trying to be badass or whatever it may be.
Right.
And I've been there before. I've done some, I've done similar things. Can't say I haven't, but I was also miserable at the time.
Yeah.
And when I see this in other guys now, and other women too, I feel sad. Like I'm sad. I feel sad for them. And part of me wanted to reach out and be like, hey bro, are you good? Because I can tell you're not, but the other part of me kind of got pissed off, because I was like, who are you to say nobody cares?
Right.
People do care. We do care.
Yeah.
So if you're going through some shit and you put that out to the world, there are a lot of people that care.
Yeah.
And they will swarm around you and create a community around you and help.
Yeah.
And so I was totally off put by that whole thing the other day, and being the alpha manly man, and I don't have all the answers. None of us do. I've gone through some shit in my life that, telling the story seems to help people. And, I've been divorced. I've been married. I've been divorced. I've gone through all the relationships. I've lost businesses, multiple businesses. And, that doesn't give me all the answers, but it gives me some advice and wisdom and whatever you want to call it, that I'm happy to share and make sure other people don't experience those same hardships that I did. If that's the best thing I can do, that to me is a pretty good gift.
Yeah. And vice versa. Everybody that ends up joining this community have lived experiences. Like that's the everybody's got a lived experience.
Yeah.
Everybody. So anyway, I love that, Jeff. I think, the heart of which this group is launching feels so, earnest, if I use that word. It feels it just feels like it's a solid place to launch from. And so I'm excited for not only meeting the guys that join, but also the conversations that happen, because I think it's in the conversation that the cool stuff starts to show up. I've done enough communities now where I realize like there's wisdom and truth and perspective that shows up because we come together in conversation that otherwise off in a whiteboard or a journal or on our own stuff doesn't show up the same way. So I'm really excited for the conversations that get created and how we all, step into the best version of ourselves and our purpose. So
yeah, same here. It's a learning experience every time. And that other group, we had semi-weekly calls kind of here and there. And people have what I call breakthroughs. And a breakthrough could be a very small thing or a very big thing, and it can come from the weirdest conversation that you're having, or honestly, it can come from a conversation that you're just listening to. Like somebody could be listening to us talk and be like, "Holy shit,
yeah,
I get it," and something just makes sense to them, and they have a breakthrough moment, and then they go do what they need to do. And I love those moments. I love hearing about them, and I love helping people get to them.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap. Those of you listening, if you want to learn more about the Lumen Project, you can go to thelumenproject.com, check out the page there and navigate around to whatever is pulling your attention, your interest. So
join the
super good.
We call it the Illuminati.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about that. Yeah. The secret handshake is we are the Illuminati. Right. I love it. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks. We'll catch you in the next episode. Everybody else listening, go to thelumenproject.com and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Take care, guys.